Hello, everyone, and welcome to the latest episode of the Responsible Edge podcast with me, Charlie Martin. As a reminder, Responsible Edge is a show about business practices that not only achieve results, but do so with integrity. So today, I was delighted to be joined by Margaret Ward. Margaret is the founder of Claddagh Creative, an agency based in Manchester, marketing agency based in Manchester, working with sustainability or sustainable led brands. To deliver ethical marketing services. A really interesting conversation with Margaret today around all things kind of ethical and responsible marketing. But in particular, we were looking at the impact of having a person-first approach to not only the way that we market our businesses, but ultimately the way that we treat our teams and how a person-first approach to your marketing can ultimately stem from a person-first approach to your team's development too. So really interesting conversation around that. There were a couple other bits specific to kind of agency setup and management when it comes to sustainability that I thought were particularly interesting as well. So just want to say a big thank you to Margaret for joining us today. If again, as always, if there are any thoughts or questions or comments for either Margaret or for ourselves based upon today's conversation, please do get in touch. Many thanks. Margaret, thank you so much for agreeing to give up some of your time this morning to join us on the latest episode of The Responsible Edge. It's great to have you.
It's lovely to be here.
Margaret, as we always start each episode with, really keen to obviously give our listeners as much kind of background about you and your experience as possible. So feel free to kick things off wherever you like at any stage. But yeah, it would just be great to hear kind of your story and what sort of, I guess, what's led us to be at this point today, having you on the Responsible Edge.
Of course. I'll try and keep it as short as I can. So for me, my journey into marketing wasn't like the conventional, essentially. Mm-hmm. I actually wanted to be a midwife and then a nurse. So it was very different to marketing. So so my journey technically starts when I was like 16 years old. So whole dream, I was like, I'm going to be a nurse, midwife, either one. And in my head, I was like, this is how I'm going to help people and how I'm going to be able to give back. I come from a very small town in the middle of nowhere in Ireland. So that was basically like how I saw like really good people doing really good things was people in healthcare. So I was like, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to do that. And then I moved to the UK very young as well with my family. And I had to have a few operations on my feet. So, and as you know, a nurse's job is very like you're on your feet, you know, sat down, it's 12-hour shifts. And I got into uni to do nursing. And I realized, no, I don't want to start this until I have my first operation. Mm-hmm. So had it and realized I had to defer my university degree because I was in crutches and I was like, I can't do a degree whilst I'm in crutches for 3 months. Absolutely not. And then, so I deferred and then had to have another operation and then I deferred again. And then I had the realization that probably not going to be able to do this. Since again, it's a very manual job. So during that like second operation phase, I was like, on Google, I was on everything. I was on YouTube, I was on Pinterest, I was on everything to try and discover what my new career was going to be, my new dream. I always knew I wanted to help people, I just didn't know how. And that was when I discovered marketing. Mm-hmm. So it, again, very different to nursing or midwifery, but discovered marketing, discovered that it's still a way to be able to help people in different ways. And I went all in. So I was 17 years old, but I went all in, and I am an all or nothing kind of person.
Margaret, I'm going to jump in there though, because I know that from knowing you as I do, but and we'll come back to that. But what were the things that you observed at that moment about marketing that kind of aligned with that notion of helping people? Because you're right, it is such a. And can I also just say that like to have gone through the experience of having this kind of, to be 16 and to really know what you want to do and be passionate about it. Like there's lots of young people that are just that never find that initial passion. To have that, and then to have that kind of essentially taken away from you in essence, in terms of it not being something that you could practically do. That's a really tough thing for a young person to go through. Like, and the fact that you then had that inner resolve to go, no, I'm just going to double down and find whatever the application of this eagerness to help people, whatever else that could look like. I just want to say, from my perspective, is incredibly commendable. I think that shows real resilience and strength.
Thank you very much. Yeah, it was quite intense, but I'm quite an intense person myself, I won't lie. But again, I knew there was something in marketing in that way. I'm a people person, so I like to speak to people, and I feel like a lot of like being able to help people comes from being able to speak to people. Sometimes people just want someone to talk to, and I saw that through marketing. I saw that there's that, whether it's social media, whether it's email, whether it's copy, you are communicating with people in another way. So that was like one of the aspects that I liked. And then the thought of being able to also work within these organizations that do give back as well, it sparked something in me. So again, I went all in within it. I got into the same uni again, but I was convinced. I was like, I've taken 2 gap years, so I need to try everything. I need to try every area of marketing. I did a 6 weeks internship at a digital agency. I worked in a fast fashion business. I worked in a sustainable startup. I worked in retail and B2B events. So I did a lot of different areas of marketing to basically uncover what it was that I liked and what I didn't like. And that's when I realized that I liked sustainable businesses. I worked within fast fashion, and if you haven't worked within fast fashion, you don't really understand, growing up within my age, older, younger, whatever it might be, you're always told that the world's on fire, or like that all these bad things are happening and fast fashion is ruining the earth and all these different things. But until you're like actually there and you see it like close up, you're like, no, actually, it's true. They're not lying to us. It's true. So that was like a realization from that. And then working in agencies, like freelancing with them whilst I was at uni, I realized that agencies could be so cool because you can work within so many different areas. You can work with so many different types of people. You can make such an impact in so many different ways. But for me, I also realized I didn't like agencies. In the same breath, didn't really like them. Didn't really like the mentality. And I'm a people person when it comes to, I like to sit and chat. I want to chat to people and I want to get to know people and learn their stories and uncover that. And I realized that within agencies, you can't really do that because you're so busy and you're so like jumping from thing to thing. So there was my journey to Claddagh Creative all stemmed from all these different things, being able to realize what I liked and what I didn't like. And again, I was so focused on getting to where I wanted to be in the future. I wanted to try everything to understand what I didn't like. So like I always recommend that to people, like not spending 2 years of your life in fast fashion if you know you don't like it within the first 3 months. Go try something else and then try something else and then do it again. If I hadn't have done that, I wouldn't have realized what I wanted to do so young. I was in my second year of uni when I started fully freelancing, like, no one else, no nothing. And I wouldn't have been able to do that if I didn't try every single one of these other things to lead me to that.
So Margaret, sorry, just so I'm clear, because I was looking at the kind of chronology of things. So you were doing these internships and sort of gathering all of this experience whilst you were at university.
It started before. So I did my first. So when I had my second operation, I was in crutches for like 3 or 4 months. It was a while. So, and I'm very much so, I like to always be productive. It's always been my mindset. So I emailed every single agency in Manchester, like every single agency. And I got one to come back to me and they offered me a 6-week work experience placement. And I did that the summer before I started uni. Okay. So, and they were amazing. They let me like shadow every single person within every department. So I could like really learn about the different areas. Because again, I went in with the mindset and I explained to them, I want to know what everything's like. I was like, I'm not interested in one thing. I want to know everything. And it was that mindset that they were like, okay, we've never had this before. Yeah, you can do everything. You can You can sit with the web developers, you can sit with the copywriters, the paid ads, everyone, which was really amazing. And then the rest of them was all from like first week of uni. Yeah.
Okay. Were you? I think I'm going to touch on this because I think it's fascinating. We've had other episodes where we talked about like what makes a good marketeer, and there's that debate about like technical kind of academic based understanding of advertising and marketing, behavioral economics, and all the rest of it. Like, is that the most useful thing, or is actually the practical real life experience of working on campaigns, developing perhaps your own personal brand, all of these sorts of things, like, is that the more valuable thing? You almost went and had that initial experience of the practical realities of marketing, and then you went to university and did sort of the two side by side. What influence? I've got lots of questions around that, but what influence did having had that practical experience have upon your experience of then going to university to learn, if you like, the technicalities of advertising and marketing?
Honestly, I am experience over everything. So I'm not one of those people who don't believe you shouldn't go to uni. The ones who believe if you're a doctor or nurse. I do believe you should go to uni. I do believe it is really beneficial, and for me, it was really beneficial. And again, I was a bit of an older student as well, so I was 20, I think, when I went to uni for my first year. But it was the practical experience over everything because I was able to go. So like my first internship, like ongoing internship, which turned into a part-time marketing job, was I got it my first week of uni during when they bring in like lectures, guest lecturers, and I got it. So first week within there, and it was B2B marketing, so I was doing everything within that side of things, which I found so interesting. But then I was coming back into uni and doing projects that were exactly what I was doing outside of it.
No, fascinating.
Like I was cheating to a degree. Like I wasn't cheating, but I felt like I was because they'd give this brief and I'm like, I did that. Like I've already done this. I know what this is. So it set me miles ahead. We hired someone, so we had some work experience come in about a year ago, and then we hired her part-time because she was just amazing. And she said the same thing. She's doing the exact same degree I did as well. And she says now every time they do a lecture, beforehand it was kind of like just going in, but now she's like, no, I know it. I was like, speak with a client, so I couldn't recommend it more, honestly.
I was going to say, I love that combination of the two, the side by side and the influence that both can have on each other in terms of coming back to uni and maybe like I'm trying to understand things from a technical perspective or theoretical perspective more, and then taking that understanding back into the real world and vice versa. It's a beautiful thing. I cut you off there. And again, I've done the classic thing of could end up having a whole podcast show on Margaret and Margaret's experience of university. But let's move on. So you got towards the end of uni or finishing uni. You'd had all of these experiences. You'd finished your degree. Is that when you set up your agency, or what was the next step?
No, so I was freelancing again throughout my whole second and third year with agencies. It was mostly with agencies and with loads of other different types of companies. And when I finished, I just went full-time into it. So full-time freelance, because I thought, oh, should I go get a full-time job? Because I've not actually done that. I've done 2 days a week for 2 years at fast fashion business or a sustainable business, and I did that. So I did work 6-7 days a week whilst I was at uni. So it was technically full-time at different businesses, but I hadn't actually gone out and worked in one of these companies full-time. So I did think, should I do that? And I even thought about dropping all of my freelance clients to go and do that, just to have that bit of experience. But then I was like, I would literally be taking a huge pay cut to be able to do that and setting myself back years to do that, just to have that experience. So I was like, no. So I went and worked as Margaret Ward, digital marketing freelancer for about a year or so afterwards. And then I slowly started to realize there was areas of marketing that I'm good at. Then there's areas I'm not that great at. I'm not a great graphic designer. I'm not a great copywriter, but there are better people than me. And my clients needed that. And even though they were really satisfied with what I was doing, I was like, this could be better. And that's when I hired someone a day a month, and then slowly started increasing her days. And then she became full-time. And then it was at that point when she was full-time that I was like, I want to create an agency as well.
Mm.
That's how Creative was born, essentially.
And let me take you back to a comment that you made earlier about your previous experience of agency land. And you mentioned that one of the things that was difficult was that there's always that busyness that ensured that actually like really in-depth conversations and care in terms of the client relationships perhaps wasn't there because people were just practically like unable to manage how busy they are. How when you realized, oh wow, I want to go to agency route, like what was it that you kind of put in place in terms of the way that you were going to develop and run that agency to ensure that that issue that you'd highlighted previously didn't rear its head?
Yeah. No direct account managers.
Okay.
So we do technically have account managers, but they're people who work directly on the account as well. So like one of our copywriters, she's an account manager plus copywriter. She works directly on the copy. Because one of the things that I had noticed, and this is I was working with agencies all over the UK who had clients all over the world. And what I was noticing is they had account managers, and the account managers, their whole job was to just make sure the client was happy. So they would go on the calls, they would put up the notes, they would hand over all these briefs. But I am a talker and I love a good story. And sustainable businesses always have an incredible story behind them. And there's so much, even like this conversation with you, there's so much of it that if someone was to just take notes and hand them over to me, that we would miss subtle things like throughout. And that was what I saw that was missing from these agencies, is there was so much that was unsaid because it was so formal, essentially. So we wanted it to be a case of like our clients could, technically have an account manager who was the person who was always definitely on a call. But then we also wanted to make sure that if our clients wanted to speak about graphic design, or they had a big graphic design project at the moment. So it's like at the moment we're working on a London Underground project with one of our clients. So our graphic designer wouldn't normally be on the calls with them, but he's going to be on them. Right, he's going to be on them so that they can speak directly to him, they can communicate it, they can chat about it, and there's no mixed messages. And that was one of the biggest things I wanted to implement, and I never want to change.
I love it. Sorry, say that again.
I feel like it's made a huge difference, like as a business.
Yeah, I love it. It's like it's one of those. It's an old Rory Sutherland sort of sweating the small stuff and thinking about like the minutiae of customer experience and or client experience, and that it's a brilliant suggestion for any agency owners out there that might be listening that are looking to kind of address that issue. Margaret, I could again, we could have a whole another episode on agency and setup, but we will come back to talking about agency as well. But for now, can we move on slightly? Obviously, we've managed to snaffle you and get you to come on to the Responsible Edge podcast. And as you know, this is a show that's all about kind of peering into responsible and ethical business practice across the board. I think it's fairly evident in terms of the career path that you've just described to us. But just give us a touch on what responsible and ethical business means to you. Why is it such a passion and such a burning light?
So for me personally and professionally, it kind of goes back to being a good person and being good to other people too. So like at Claddagh, we don't do sustainable marketing, we do ethical marketing. And the reason for that is it goes back to people and being like ethical as a human being. So it just, to us, it just means being a good person in everything you do and remembering that your customers are also people. And I know that sounds very obvious, but people forget that. Like agencies and businesses forget that we're not a consumer, like we are a human being at the end of the day. So a big part of like responsible marketing and ethical marketing is just being good. Like being good, people, planet, all of it, and just always thinking with that hat on.
I love that, and definitely want to explore like how that applies to Claddagh and how the work that you guys are doing there. It's really interesting what you say about treating people, customers, if you like, clients as people. We did an interesting show before where we were talking about data and how that we lose the human nature when we look at data. You know, when you look at that email list and you see just the number of subscribers, and you really do need to remind yourself that behind every single one of those numbers is a, as you say, is a person who needs to be treated as such. Really interesting. Margaret, let's move on. This week's article was a Forbes piece. Be really interested to just get your kind of initial summary, if you like, you can provide for our listeners as to what was covered in that piece.
So the article, in essence, was talking about, without even saying it, was talking about ethical marketing and being an ethical business and person, and about corporate responsibility as a whole, which is so important in this day and age and as a whole. And the area that I was most interested within it was putting your people first. Because this is actually something we talk about a lot as well. Our people, and then actually like our clients' people too. Again, agencies forget about the fact that their clients have actual staff members.
Okay. As we've just alluded to. Yeah, no, that's okay. That's particularly interesting. And what was when you read that, and when you focus in on that kind of people first approach, like what are the things from your perspective that are the biggest challenges that businesses face, if you like, in adopting that approach? Like why it seems so clear and so simple, but in your estimations, in your experience, like why aren't organizations adopting that approach as a kind of a uniform way of doing things?
I mean, when it comes to agencies in particular, if I speak on that, I feel like it's predominantly because they're so focused on getting that client and getting the next client and then getting it on and growing the actual business. And they're so focused on like the overarching things of it that they don't really focus in on the actual people underneath, not underneath, but that make up your actual business. I think that's probably like one of the biggest things as well. And I feel like as well, like whenever I speak to other agency owners, they're scared of like and anxious about spending too much time and investing too much time into their team for them then just to leave. But I feel like it's such a bad mentality, because if you invest that time into people, they will stay. Like people don't want to leave. And this I always think about it when I was freelancing within like a specific agency. I was there for 15 months. They had 6 different account managers. It was insane. And that was one thing that stuck with me when it comes to putting people first. So I'm thinking, no one on this earth wants to apply for a job, start said job, do the training, and then leave within 8 to 12 weeks. They don't want to do it. They absolutely don't want to do it. And if they are doing it, there's clearly an issue like within the actual company. And the agency wasn't like a bad agency or anything. It was just because they were so focused on getting the next client and not actually nurturing and taking care of the people within. So that was my thought process when it comes to it.
It's really interesting. I couldn't agree with you more. And from my own personal experience, I think there's also like a slight short-sightedness in terms of the value that, if we're talking about employees here, the impact of, regardless of how long that employee is with you, for whatever reason, like life's messy, and there are times when, you know, for whatever reason, somebody might ultimately leave the business. If you look at prioritizing their experience, though, and understanding that for the time that they're with you, they're treated as such, but then if you treat them in that way, they are a referrer. They are a referrer of other people to come and join your business. They're a referrer of other companies to come and work with you. They're a potential evangelist for the way, the culture and what you do and the way that you do things. To have that short-sightedness, to not see the value that you have in somebody internal, and therefore somebody that you can kind of, I guess, almost like inspire to be influential for your business. That
100%.
seems to me to be the biggest sort of misguided. That's the biggest misguided nature or misguidedness of organizations that don't adopt a people first approach when it comes to their employees.
Yeah. It's also like people do, I know, again, it's one of those common things, but like people buy into people, but they really, really do. So like whether it's an agency or a brand, whether you're like a buyer for a big fashion brand or whatever it might be, the suppliers and the contacts that you have are because of that individual person sometimes, and not because of the big business. So like even with us, our clients have really great relationships with the team, and I absolutely encourage it. And even myself, like our clients are amazing. We truly think about it in that way. Like they are a reflection of you.
Mm.
And if your clients or your suppliers or whatever it might be, love them and feel respected and nurtured, I guess, as well by them too, it's only a good reflection on you, and it's only going to make the work better and the business better. So I don't understand why people don't think about it in that way, because it feels like common sense to me.
And I agree. Yeah, again, I think that's a really, really good point. It almost takes it in terms of if your employees, your account managers, your fee earners, etc., within your agency are being treated a certain way, it's likely that will manifest in terms of the way that they then go on and treat your clients and the people that they're working with, which has that knock-on effect of, as you say, of improving kind of client agency relationships. So yeah, that in your estimation, this is just like absolutely fundamental and core to building any business, not just an agency, would you say?
Honestly, any business at all. Like even our clients, like some of them are smaller businesses, some of them are medium, and some of them are large. It's something we talk about a lot. Like we work very closely, and we like to see ourselves as like an extension of their team in essence. We work so closely with their team, and they are so good to their team. And a lot of them, their team have been with them for like 10 years or, since the beginning or whatever it might be. And it's because they're good to them. They treat them well. They treat them like, again, a human being. And it's remembering that. And again, it's like people will go the extra mile. They will work harder. They will work smarter. They will want to improve. And it's that word of mouth thing as well that you talked about. Like, how many people have you ever spoken to in your life where they've been like, that was a crap company? They're awful to their employees, never work there, or they did this, they did that, whatever it might be. And even though it might have been their one individual experience, word of mouth is everything in marketing, in life. We go off recommendations in every area of our life, basically. So you want those recommendations and that word of mouth to be positive. So why wouldn't you?
Fascinating. Let me ask you the question. Like, you've obviously talked about the fact that Claddagh and the agency that you've built is focused on ethical marketing, but for sustainable brands. If I've understood the introduction appropriately. We're really interested. Obviously, we've connected on some of the work that we're doing at the Anti-Greenwash Charter to help sort of hold companies accountable, specifically looking at the way that they communicate. In what other ways, though, or perhaps touching upon that way too, can companies hold themselves accountable for their commitments to kind of sustainability and ethics? Like, what are the other things that you encourage your clients to do in order to actually kind of practice what they're preaching?
Speak to an expert. Let's speak to an actual sustainability expert. So we work with so many different sustainable businesses who do so many different types of businesses, and it's one thing that we put it in our onboarding. So our onboarding process is quite long, but we make it very clear that this is what they should do if they don't understand it. So a lot of people, they start businesses and start these sustainable businesses, and they don't actually have experience within sustainability, so they don't really understand it. So from our point, it's invest into that. Speak to an actual sustainability expert, a consultant, or wherever it might be within your area. That will hold you accountable. They will be able to create like an action plan for you, something that's actually like feasible for you and your business and your finances, as well. But 100% recommend that.
And out of interest, Margaret, that's a brilliant bit of advice to, I think, anyone out there that's thinking like, okay, we want to be able to make these commitments, but we also want to make sure that those commitments are there's rigor behind, the actual successful implementation of them. From a marketeer's perspective, though, talk us through kind of the processes that you guys have in place to perhaps challenge or perhaps clarify, if you like, when a client comes to you, and says, guys, we want to run a campaign, and these are our kind of key sustainability or ethical messages that we want to incorporate. Like, what's your responsibility, or what's the way that you approach kind of the verification of the information that you're ultimately going to use to promote them as an organization? Is that something that's part of your process?
So for that part of it, I know you guys are working on something on the side, which I think will be really incredible for this and for us as a business as well. But for us, it does go back to the sustainability consultant side of things. We are very much so, we push that to our clients, that if they need to understand whatever they are saying needs to be obviously correct and needs to be factual. We can't just throw out these terms. And obviously every country is slightly different in the way they do it too. So we go off that, and that's what we have to base it off. So majority of our clients have worked with sustainability consultants. The only ones that haven't have got that experience themselves within sustainability. So we are relying on the information they give us within their impact reports, within everything, within their sustainability promises, all of it. So we go based off that. And then when they do give us anything, it always tends to relate back to what they've given us to the beginning, which is through our onboarding process, which explains exactly what sustainability means to them, what actually, because, there's certain aspects of it, like whether it's like circular economy or whatever it might be, that we get very clear on what it means to them. And then we have to back it up to make sure that that is actually what it means too. And that they're not putting their own meaning onto a word as well. So that a lot of that process, Charlie, that happens in the onboarding process. Okay. So and if there's anything that comes into the mix, or new words or whatever they want to talk about, they do tend to back it up with a sustainability consultant themselves as well.
Super interesting. I've got a few different questions on that, but one of the ones that jumps into my mind. Do you think that kind of approach, that, if I've understood you correctly, like the way that you guys go through that onboarding process, where it's almost like interrogating kind of what sustainability messages can we ultimately share, and then trying to understand, the verification process that's been sort of handled by the sustainability consultant, and then for you guys to be clear about, okay, we're comfortable with what we're able to ultimately share on behalf of this client as a result of that process. Is that the sort of thing that you would advise, if we're talking about marketeers being recruited and brought in-house within organizations, should the same sort of process, if you like, be applied, but just within an internal realm? Would that be something that you would recommend to how you go about onboarding a new comms or marketing professional working within an organization too?
Yeah, so like our onboarding process with clients is quite thorough. I wouldn't say interrogate, but we kind of do. And we're very, very open with that. Like, they have to go through about 60 to 70 questions within certain different areas. So it's very thorough. And our onboarding process is 30 days. So they get those questions, and then they have to get back within like 9 days. So then we can go through their answers and be like, what do you mean with this? How can you back this up? Where is this information? So we're really thorough when it comes to that. And from like hiring a new employee or whoever comes into the business, if you have this information that they can actually go through, as a marketeer, you should know you're the person. It depends obviously within your role, whether it's like, email marketing or social, whatever it might be, but you are very up there and close with the actual customer too. You should understand the business like the back of your hand, in my opinion, and that's what we believe in. So that's why we like to say, like, we're an extension of your team, and the reason why is we should know just as much as your team does. And that was a big gap that I felt other agencies had, is that they didn't understand. If you have that team that comes on, whether they're new, it's their first role, and especially talking about agencies specifically as well, you work with so many different types of businesses and so many different types of customers. It's a lot more intense than working on one brand. And that too, being able to understand that and truly understand the business to that degree and be able to have this information in front of you, I couldn't recommend it more. It just makes everything so much easier and so much more straightforward. And even from your client's point of view, again, if they can be like, yeah, my business, that's just going to make them so much more at ease.
True. I totally get that. I also think the thing that I think is fascinating about this is it's almost like it's a great way for you for the client's business to establish whether or not, if I can't convince you guys through the onboarding process that not only my sustainability and ethical messaging is good, essentially, and is strong, but ultimately is something I can convince you of the credibility of through the questions. That's a great way for, if there are issues where you guys turn around and go, hold on a minute, guys, we're not sure that
100%.
the way that you put this together is quite right, or that really can be said in that way, or we think there's weakness here. It's a brilliant way of engaging with you guys to sort of have that qualification, if you like.
Yeah, well, like we had one client who did it, because it is quite thorough. We had one client who did it, and he with one of the questions, he's a really great guy, but one of the questions was about the people who make your products. And again, sounds very obvious. He actually couldn't tell me who makes his products. exactly where they're based and like their conditions. And that's like a part of sustainability. He was focusing on like all the other areas of it, which they were doing incredible things on the other side. But that individual part, he was working with someone else who he knew from previous, who actually, did that connection. So he couldn't really supply that information. And I was like, well, then you need to go and do that. You need to invest some time into that and really understand it. And then he went away and everything was all good. But that was like a part of his business that was like a bit of a blank spot that he was just like, actually. So it was really, really great for him in that way that you could actually kind of going back to your foundations of your business, essentially.
Absolutely. And it's almost like, I love it because it's almost like get your house in order. And when you're ready, when you think you're ready to start talking about, the well-built foundational house that you put together, that's when you need to speak to a marketeer and convince them of the credibility of the messages that you're looking to deliver. And if at that point you get queried on, the quality of the evidence and the quality of what's being delivered, that's perhaps the time to rethink or to look at your business again.
Yeah, exactly. Because like with our clients, we don't expect them to be completely sustainable. Like we talk about being sustainably led, not completely sustainable, because it's not really possible. So as long as you're honest and you're transparent and no one's judging, you say exactly where you are right now, and you also explain where you want to be, and you actually explain how you're going to get there too, then I'm cool with that. I'm fine. As long as you can explain it to me and you've actually put in actionable steps, then we're on the same page. But
I love that.
At the stage.
Yeah, I love that. We've actually done something very much akin to that with our green claims policy template that we share with prospective signatories at the charter now, whereby one of the big criticisms that we had was like, guys, it's great what you're doing, but ultimately there's, it's not what organizations are saying, it's perhaps what they're not saying that should be pried into and considered, when it comes to the greenwashing piece, which is a totally fair comment. So what we've got now is a mandatory section in our green claims policy, which is essentially where we could improve, acknowledging that any organization is not 100% environmentally sustainable, and therefore there are going to be areas that they can as an organization improve. And what we want to see is every signatory of our charter detailing these are the bits that we could do better in, and this is our pathway to get better in those areas. And we think that is a way of appeasing, if you like, those additional concerns around, well, guys, you said that this is environmentally friendly over here, but we know that the other aspects of your business which aren't so. So very much aligned with that. Sorry, I use that as an opportunity to slightly plug our revised GCP. Margaret, we've rattled through a lot of interesting stuff here today. I just want to just finish with a little bit of a couple of reflections on looking to the future. So what are the kind of major future trends that you kind of foresee in the kind of ethical, marketing, corporate responsibility space? Like, what are the things that you think are on the agenda as we move forward into the rest of 2024 and beyond?
I know, again, a lot of people talk about like authenticity, but I do truly see that coming through, and even more focus on actually the people behind your customers and who they are. Like those are big parts of what we really focus on, is being authentic in every way, and always thinking like, does this actually reflect who we are? Even in, whether it's like a trend or it's, a funny thing or whatever it might be, always coming back to like, does this feel like something our core customer would actually enjoy or relate to, or does it actually feel real? So that's like a big focus about what we're focusing on and what we are seeing come through too, even from like new potential clients that come in the door. And then, the focus on actually the people behind it, which relates to the authenticity thing too. Like people are, I know we talk about how like since COVID, things have changed in the way like people are a little bit more like awake, I guess, when it comes to things. But we're so used to consuming so much content that if we don't think about the people as people and about human emotions that come with that, then we're not really going to get that far.
It's really interesting. Like, do you see, I've got a few different hats on when thinking about what you've just said. I mean, one of the big things that's come out recently, in fact, we had an episode that we recorded yesterday looking at out-of-home advertising compared to other kind of media forms. And obviously there's a lot more kind of focus, if you like, on the environmental impact of marketing, advertising as an activity in of itself, and how essentially, if we're honest with ourselves, the days of like mass marketing and the thousands and millions or trillions, I think, of emails that are sent and social posts and basically content that's being produced, we're perhaps heading towards more of a quality over quantity, more personalized, more customized, like looking to use data in order to really drive into kind of the personalized experience for a customer, for a person, if you like, than ever before. Is that where you see this heading? Is it, are we going to get towards that? And is that therefore going to be a more authentic way of approaching kind of customer development?
Yeah, 100%. I would say that's exactly a nice way to put it. But yeah, that's exactly what I would say. Like, even there's so many different businesses out there. All right. And I am, for example, I'm a jewelry girl. I love jewelry. There's so many jewelry businesses out there. All right. You need to think about how you are going to attract me. All right. So how are you going to make me a customer? And a big part of that is actually treating me again like an actual human, actually speaking to me, actually feeling like you genuinely want to do something good and you want to be a good business, I guess, in a way. People do see that. Like, people do see that. Even, when I'm scrolling through social, the ones that stand out to me are the ones who are listening to their customers and who are actually talking to them, whether it's in the actual comment section, or, actually via emails or whatever it might be. It's putting a big focus on actually speaking to people and then using that as data to personalize things. I really believe in that.
How, when you think about Claddagh and you think about what you're doing moving forward as an agency, you think about some of the themes that we've talked about today around authenticity, thinking about kind of the impact of the adoption of that on your engagement as an agency with people, both in terms of your internal stakeholders, your staff, investors, etc., but equally in terms of clients and the relationships you build with them. What impact do you see that having, leaning into greater authenticity will have on the agency as you grow and develop?
So the main reasons I created Claddagh Creative in the way that I did was because I saw what other agencies were doing and I was like, this can be done better and it can be done in a better way and it can be done in like a more people first way. So there's aspects of that. It's like we want to work always with sustainably led businesses. We always want to incorporate storytelling into it, and we always want to really truly focus on the customer first. So these are like core things that made us at the beginning, and that's how I see it always being. So for us, it's always just sticking to we are people first, and I mean that in the way of our actual team. Again, going back to what we talked about, if you don't treat your team well and you don't invest into them and you don't give them the flexibility, that this day and age requires, then you're only going to get so far. If we don't focus on our clients the way in which we've always focused on them, which is again, treating them like people and actually creating those really great relationships, then all of these kind of things that I'm talking about, that's what we focus on as a business now, what we did 2 years ago and what we will still do in 5 years, because I will not be one of those agencies that chases the next client and doesn't focus on the ones we do, and always keeping with who we are as a business and who we want to be.
I love that. It's that. And again, actually, it's beautiful because we've crescendoed back to the beginning of the conversation where we obviously were talking a bit about your background and the resilience that you showed in terms of your, the pivot, if you like, in terms of your early career and deciding what you wanted to invest your evident passion into. And again, I think it's nice to see that, when you talk about your agency, that there's that real commitment to being resilient and strong in the conviction that you have in terms of those underpinning values of what the agency stands for. So, Margaret, that was brilliant. We always like to finish an episode sort of asking a question around advice that you would offer. Want to tweak things slightly for today and ask you, thinking about the experiences that you've had as you've grown, your business and developed your career, if there was any other youngsters out there, if you like, younger people that are looking at kind of, doing something similar, what would be the kind of key bits of advice that you would offer them that relate to your experience?
I would say two like core things would be always trust your gut and don't hold yourself back. And I mean that in the way of we can be so busy in our lives, that life is so busy. But if you have a goal and you truly want to get to that goal, a lot of the time the thing that is stopping you from reaching that goal can be yourself. And and not in like a negative way, but it can be. We'll focus on other areas of our lives before we'll focus on that goal. And for me, it's always what I believed in is if you want to get to that goal, don't hold yourself back. And like there might be an aspect of like if you're in a room, you're in a lecture, you're in a job space, whatever it might be, and if you want something and if you don't ask for it because you're nervous or you're anxious or whatever it might be, you're holding yourself back. Right? What's going to happen if you ask that question or if you do that thing? Like if they say no, they say no. If it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. All right. If you need to start again, you need to start again. But just trust your gut and never let you be the person that stops you from not succeeding.
I love that. And again, I think the thing that brilliant advice. Isn't it amazing how all of the kind of great advice is great advice? It kind of stands the test of time, doesn't it? And I think that those two are brilliant. One thing about that second point, though, about don't let yourself get in your way, essentially, is I really like this coining of this phase of and actually it aligns perfectly with our people first focus of discussion for today, is around the idea of recruiting yourself, getting yourself on board. And actually as young people, often that's the kind of growth that we go through, is going like, okay, I'm trying to work things out. I'm trying to understand what my passions are and where my effort and energy is going to go. But actually at some point you need to start thinking about yourself as somebody that needs to get on side, and you need to recruit and you need to nurture and support. Do you like it?
I love that. Yeah, that's basically what I say all the time. Like, it's like if you're networking and you're in a room and you get nervous, all right, and you don't want to go speak to someone, and like this, someone you really admire, or they run like an incredible company that you'd love to like learn more about, whatever it might be. If you leave that room and you haven't gone up and asked that person that question, or even just introduced yourself, the only person you're kind of letting down is yourself. Right? You go up and you speak to that person, and most people, are hopefully good people, and they will speak back to you. And that's how I got an internship at Draper's, and that was exactly how I did it. Went up and spoke to her. I was sweating, I was anxious, I was nervous, I was beaten. I went up, spoke to her, and she offered me an internship on the spot. And I went away, and I was like, I'm done for the day now. That was my one thing. But it's that aspect of like, yeah, if you want to get there, of course you can rely on other people to a degree, but the person you should rely on the most is yourself to be able to actually propel you to where you need to be able to be. So it's always the advice I give to anyone, like, just do it.
Love it. Oh, I love it. Let's crescendo the conversation on the Nike slogan and factor that in. Margaret, that's been brilliant. If you haven't been totally horrified by the experience, we'll definitely invite you back on for episode 2. But thank you very much for joining us today, and thank you again.
Thank you for having me.